This episode is brought to you by Brent, one of our backers of the Season 3 Kickstarter. Thank you for your support, Brent. Brent also wants to mention Rollwise at youtube.com/@Rollwise. It's a YouTube channel where a group of friends get together and discuss all things tabletop gaming, with the intent of making you feel like part of our conversations. Go check it out. The link is in our show notes. Enjoy the episode. Hello, and welcome to Ludonarrative Dissidents. This is Season 3, Episode 6, I believe. We are recording an episode on Alien RPG. Chariot of the Gods is the name of the scenario. This Chariot of the Gods is a scenario in the Alien RPG system, a licensed RPG published by Free League. Alien uses the Year Zero engine. Like Tales from the Loop, we have reviewed before. Although we have not reviewed Alien RPG itself, it is a D6 pool system, and we'll be talking about some of the mechanics, but it's based on the cinematic universe of Alien. But Chariot of the Gods is, of course, named after the first book to espouse the alien astronaut theory as nonfiction.
Eric Van Deniken.
Yes.
No, that's Von Daniken.
Was it really the first?
It's the first, I think so, because he got it from Lovecraft. And
wow.
I
mean, of all the ideas he could have picked up reading H.P. Lovecraft, that's not the most toxic by far.
Still pretty racist.
It is one of the most commercial, it must be said.
Yeah,
as he went on to prove.
Yeah.
Many copies of his books.
Oh yeah, it was a worldwide hit.
See,
millions.
The whole thing, yeah, and people still.
The History Channel would not exist without Chariot of the Gods. Let's be honest. But Chariot of the Gods, the RPG scenario, and obviously we will be spoiling it, has nothing to do
spoilers
with that.
Spoilers, you guys, look out! There's spoilers. They're coming. They're in the vents.
So if you haven't played the scenario and you want to play it, or then don't listen to it. Of course, if you want to run it, it's probably a good thing to listen to.
I would say if we leave a single plot point unturned, then we're probably not doing our jobs properly. This is a dissection. We are going to be taking this puppy apart. Do not expect to come out of this not knowing exactly how this adventure works.
It seems very, very likely that there will be some criticism leveled at least one Star Wars movie. So,
and at least one Alien movie as well.
So this is a, some of our more sensitive fans may wish to just skip ahead.
Fair enough. This and talking about the movies is a good starting point, because what is the appeal of doing a RPG based on a famous film or a film series, a film cinematic universe, right, as the kids call it these days? Chariot of the Gods attempts to answer that by taking the major themes and tropes of the Alien cinematic universe and remixing them, so you go into the scenario thinking you know what's going to happen, but it's not quite the same. It's different enough to surprise, I think, players. And I mean, I like, weirdly enough, I have run the scenario for the RPPR crew and I had a good time with it. And I thought there was and that's why I put it on the list of scenarios for voting, because I thought there was a lot of interesting, like, as a challenge for a game designer, how would you approach the Alien cinematic universe? Because yeah. All right, so we have a lot to talk about.
Here was the first thing I noticed about it was I downloaded the character sheets and their agendas, and I was struck by how usually I don't issue agendas even with pre-gens for a one-shot scenario. It's like, here is how you stay in character, and I'm like, man, half the fun of gaming is getting your character and doing a hard lateral jack move. And it's like, oh, so I'm the guy who's supposed to be screw everyone else. I've got to make that money for my sick sister. No, I'm going to suddenly develop. My heart's going to grow 3 sizes. I'm now the most loyal guy on this ship. And I get it. I get it because I get the impression this is a pretty heavy fatality setting and system where you're going to go through characters pretty quick at like Delta Green speeds. And so it's like, oh, well, so-and-so went out the airlock. Here you go. Here's someone that just got defrosted from the second ship's crew. You're him now. Here's your agenda. Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah. You just rolled really badly. And now he's killed himself before the aliens get a chance to. Mercy. All right. Well, now you're this guy from this third ship. And yes, it makes sense because nobody likes having a game where, oh, I made some bad rolls, so now I'm going to sit on my phone and look through the host's comic book collection for the next 90 minutes while everyone else plays the game. That no one likes that. Yeah. Though I suppose it's more forgivable at a convention where if someone dies out early, you can just say, oh, man, that sucks. You want to stick around and watch the rest, or you want to go see the rest of the show?
I bumped off against this as well. And it's not part of the scenario design. It's part of the system design. It's actually in the rule book for the cinematic play. This idea that the characters have three different... The scenario is presented in 3 acts, and the PCs have different agendas, assigned agendas, for each of those acts, which I can see giving motivation, particularly if you literally passed your character at the start of the scenario, you've got no idea. It gives you a handle. It gives you something to be doing. And likewise, they have this lovely little system for buddies and enemies. One member of the crew is your buddy, one member of the crew is your enemy, and you actually get XP for helping out your buddy and potentially saving their lives, and also you get XP at the end for facing off against your enemy, assuming that you survive, which, as you say, Greg, you're probably not going to. This is a very fatal thing. And it actually says at one point in the scenario, it may well come down to the thing that there's one crew member left. And I come from all kinds of backgrounds, but I've spent a lot of time in board games. Board games have spent the last half a century designing out the problem of games where everyone gets knocked out and sits around watching the last couple of players fight it out. To Monopoly being the canonical example.
Monopoly problem.
One of the Monopoly problems.
The major Monopoly problem is that it makes you hate people you're related to and are going to see at Christmas and Thanksgiving for the rest of your life till one of you dies. But only slightly behind that is, it's the free parking problem. But if you actually play the rules
that's a separate podcast, Greg.
That's an entirely separate podcast. Yeah, the fact that the scenario, because I didn't find that in the rulebook, but which I have to admit I didn't read in detail because it's 400 friggin' pages, and I have better Alien RPGs in 32 pages on my shelf. I did not take to the Alien RPG rulebook. I really didn't. We'll get onto the layout later on, for many reasons. But the fact that they've kind of designed this problem
were the columns balanced, James?
The columns are balanced, but everything is presented in the generic SFRPG text boxes, which I think have been around since the late 90s and don't mean anything and don't appear in the Alien movies either. So they're not... It's interesting because the Alien movies have a very distinctive and, it's of the time. It's late 70s, early 80s, the actual graphical design style of a lot of it. But it's very distinctive and it's speaks so much of that worn-in universe. And both the scenario and the rulebook as a whole just go with this generic, ugly text box style, which I personally hate. It's intensely repetitive. It takes up space. I'm digressing already. I apologize.
Get it out, James. Better out than in. You'll sleep better.
Yeah.
This scenario has a lot of structural problems, and we haven't really... It is a single session adventure that is queued to last 4 hours. 4 hours is a really difficult length for a single session adventure these days. It's too long for a convention slot. It's too long for most evenings if you're a grown-up with other responsibilities, and particularly if you've got kids and stuff. People gather at you. If you start playing at 7 o'clock, you're not going to finish the game till 11. Assuming it runs to time. There's no natural break point in the middle. There's no point where you can kind of go, let's call it an evening, we'll pick this up next week. Yes, it's an interesting design challenge because it's designed to be the first adventure that you play with the game, or one of the first. It's specifically referenced in the rulebook And it takes all of its cues, or its initial cues, from the Alien, the classic Alien, one of the great science fiction movies. I don't think there's any argument there. Original Alien is a work of absolute genius on all levels. It's very hard to fault.
Yup.
It's absolutely great. So it starts off like that. You're in a slightly decrepit old tug hauling a cargo. You wake up from deep sleep, hypersleep, whatever. I forget the exact terminology.
Cryosleep, I think they
Cryosleep in the Alien universe. Because the ship's picked up a distress signal, has automatically dropped out of faster than light to respond to this, because that's what it does. And one of the crew is secretly an android, and you had no idea. And that crew member, they know from the beginning. So it's picking up all of these cues, and then it has to do something original with that. And it makes a reasonable stab at it. I'll put it that way. I've no idea how it worked in play. I didn't have the taste to run. I didn't have the time to run it. I apologize.
Yeah.
The thoughts this brought up for me. Oh, do you want to go, Ross, or I could go for a while?
Just a few notes. It actually took me 2 sessions. Each one was about 2.5 hours, a little over 2.5 hours long. It was, which was more of a function of like, by the time we got 2.5 hours in, it was like, this is a good. We reached a scene that was a good stopping point, and it was like, it's getting late. Let's not try and rush through the ending. Let's give it time.
Sometimes you got to let that steak rest before you relish it.
We took 2 sessions to do it, but overall, I also had like a full group. I had 5 players. If you had fewer players, it would take less time. It's a versatile scenario in that regard, but yeah, it's meant to be this standalone story. I think it does it. One of another reasons why I did want to talk about this or include this in the list of scenarios is because, as you mentioned, there's a PvP element. There's secret agendas and the possibility, a very strong likelihood of players wanting to fight or destroy other players, because one of the players is a secret android working for a rival corporation, trying to sabotage everything. And that android can be any of the pre-generated characters. You don't have the GM can just choose or randomly or just say, oh, this player would be great for this role, so I'm going to have them do it. So which works really well. And
can you imagine your boy Aaron as the android?
I can't remember who I put in there. We ran this back in 2019. So yeah, 5 years ago. So
Caleb with his GM instincts would be a ferocious.
Oh yeah, I would never have made Caleb that. That would have been too.
He would put you in the airlock and say, and as it's ticking down, he would just look at you through the window and say, I recommend evacuating your lungs before you go out into the icy void, because it will be ultimately much quicker and less painful that way.
But
he would go full David.
Yeah, exactly.
And Prometheus had its problems, but the delivery of the line about needless suffering was chef kiss.
Yeah. Oh, Fassbender he's so good.
Yeah. So we had a lot of fun with it, and it had enough surprises for people who were expecting, one thing about the scenario is that it does not have the standard xenomorph alien. They instead have mutations, variants of it, so players aren't exactly sure who is a threat and who isn't. Yeah, for me, I thought it was a good remix of Alien, enough to give a lively night of role playing and everyone having a lot of fun, and that was my overall impression of it. At the table, it worked great. The Alien RPG has a really good stress system where you gain stress die as you fail rolls, or certain things happen to you, but you roll the stress die as you add to skill events or to skill checks. And so you kind of want a couple stress die so you actually can do well, but then it turns into this death spiral very quickly as you get, because every one or every bad roll in a stress die, which is a different color than a regular die, or it's rolled separately, is bad, or it can induce a panic check.
So it's one of these things where it's like, I got to ride the wave, but I can't go too far to one side or the other.
And it's very hard to get rid of stress. There's only a couple of ways game mechanic wise.
I saw in this one, if you find the corporate dude's secret shoot in the eyeball drug stash,
Yeah.
it resets your stress to 0.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the scenario itself, just the structure of it and how protected this is, I'm like, this must be a really good effect. This must kick some kind of ass.
Oh, yeah, because like once you get too many stress die, you're always going to be panicking or nearly always panicking on rolls. And your characters just fall apart, which replicates the 3-act structure by the time you get to the late act 2. Yeah, exactly.
Game over.
And everything falls apart, and everyone gets their arms ripped off by abominations. It's great. At the play table, it worked well. There were enough handouts, and the agendas actually worked pretty well, in my experience, to give players, here are the keynotes of how to play your character. And the player characters the agendas put them at odds with each other, which creates, an interesting tension.
Which is not hard to do with pre-gens. And is super fun to do with pre-gens.
Yeah. I do remember I did not
says the man who wrote Jailbreak.
Exactly. I was thinking of Jailbreak a little bit because there's a lot of there are a lot of floating events, as we talked about in Convergence, that could happen at any time. And you can choose to have them I didn't even have the pirate ship show up because things
didn't need it.
Yeah, you didn't need it. Yeah. Everyone died. I mean, I think one player wound up alive at the end, and he piloted the ship into a sun, or into deep space, so no one could find it.
Ross is sitting here. Oh, I don't need no bitch ass pirate ship to kill all these characters.
If someone had died early on, I would have had the pirate ship show up to have replacement characters. But everyone kind of died in pretty quick succession, so no one was feeling left out. Which is
everyone
important.
died at just the right point.
Yeah, we should probably get into maybe talking just act by act, because this game is very
Before we do that, so what this made me think, it made me think about a number of different media, and so I'm like, yeah, even the title on this does not feel that original to me, but at the same time, I'm like, well, from a commercial standpoint, originality is really super overrated. If you're just trying to make a buck and your options are, retread something that was really popular or try something really, really different, you would automatically go for the retread. And I did a little research, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So Everything Everywhere All at Once, an original, wonderful, brilliant. I cannot think of any change you could make to that movie that would not be a diminishment.
Mm-hmm.
And it made $143 million worldwide, right?
Okay.
The Rise of Skywalker, which made $1 billion. The Last Jedi made $1.3 billion. And I think The Last Jedi is a much less bad movie than The Rise of Skywalker. So quality clearly has an effect in that of 2 late-stage Star Wars movies. Man, I'm saying late-stage Star Wars like it's a form of cancer now. Damn. But
and I think as far as Disney's concerned, we have only begun to experience the Star Wars movies.
we are going to metastasize this so hard, guys. It's going to, But that, yeah.
We are going to neomorph these movies.
That the difference between a well-made retread and a poor retread financially is twice the income of a brilliant, wonderful, incandescent original thing. And that makes me sad, honestly. But, and dialing it into the comparatively microscopic requirements of gaming for an audience of 5 as opposed to an audience of a measurable percentage of humankind, I'm like, okay, how original does a game have to be? I've always, when I write a scenario for any game system, there's always this conscious and subconscious drive in me to do something that the GM at home couldn't have done. And I always strove to, I'm like, I want this to be more interesting. I want this to be weirder. I want this to be something that just an untrained guy who does not have decades of experience and literary deep reads and training in narratology. I want to write something that guy couldn't do so that he is incentivized to buy it. I want to give him his money's worth. And reading this, I'm like, well, maybe all they really want is someone to save them the time. Because I felt like, I thought this had some pretty solid structural elements in it. I think James is going to disagree. But I'm like, is there anything in here I absolutely could not have thought of when I was 19?
I agree completely with that. There is no point in this adventure where I went, whoa, that's clever. Oh, what a great idea. I'm going to borrow that. No, feels like if I had aged 19 and loved the Alien series, if I had wanted to write an adventure based on the original Alien movie, but bringing in the stuff from Prometheus and
Covenant.
One I'm blanking on the name of already. I'm going to lump them into a subgenre of Alien movies. I'm going to call them the stupid movies. This is, we'll come on to that. They're stupid. Yeah. They ruin...
Shots fired.
In a way that... 1 and 2, brilliant movies. 3 and 4, not great, but elements in there. 5 and 6, bizarrely, somehow completely fail to understand what makes the Alien movies work. They are not necessarily bad movies in their own, but they ruin so much of the others. But if I loved the Cold Canon and I wanted to integrate elements from 5 and 6 into an adventure based on 1, this is what I would have written age 19. Pretty much, more or less note for note, only without some of the bits we'll come on to.
I will admit, 19-year-old Greg probably would have used the future conditional more.
Yeah, I dare say I would as well.
Filthy little animal, that dirty, ignorant creature.
Yeah.
But there is a long tradition in role-playing games of providing products that are basically stuff that the GM themselves could have come up with. They just don't have the time. The Forgotten Realms famously was described by people at TSR as the background world you would have designed yourself, but you don't have the time. It's the Forgotten Realms does not have that many surprises and really cool bits in it. It's just kind of by the numbers fantasy, but it's really solid. The difference is between watching the movies on the screen or even in the cinema or on your laptop or wherever else and playing it as a game. And I've banged on this before. I banged on this for 10 years teaching interactive narrative. When you're playing the game, you are the characters. You're not watching the characters. You're not identifying with the characters. You are the characters. You are seeing the universe through their eyes and you are making the decisions for them. And that is different. Alien, you don't, until you get down to the final girl, till you get down to Ripley, you don't really have a viewpoint character. You dip between you follow all of the characters and you are observing them. You're not necessarily identifying with them. So when they die, it's slightly less, you don't feel it personally.
Slightly less. But within a role-playing adventure, of course you have a character. It's you. Whether you play your characters in close and you want to understand their psyche or you play them like a puppet, you still identify with that character. And you want them to survive, generally, or have a heroic But that's my
death.
guy.
Yeah. So I can see there is value in doing an interactive version. And God knows many video games have traded on this, particularly I'm blanking on the name of it again, the Alien video game that came out a few years ago. Isolation. The one which does one really horrible narrative thing by centering it around Ripley's daughter. It's like, I can see why you did that. I still think it's a really stupid piece of storytelling. But the narrative, the sense of being there, the sense of being chased by this thing, the sense of spending half an hour hiding in a frigging cupboard so that it will, while this thing might be prowling past outside, absolutely visceral, absolutely brilliant. So there is value in that. And this is designed to be, the first adventure that you run for the game, or the first large adventure that you run for the game, even if it is just a single session or 2 sessions. I can see there's value in that, to do classic Alien that everyone understands, and then twist it again because it's a 3-act structure. Mm-hmm. That's not without merit.
It's not. Originality by itself is not the unalloyed virtue I want to take into the field and champion. Something I've thought about a lot is romance novels, right? Because romance novels are a genre that is both very profitable and despised, right? Because they're for women, so therefore naturally they can't be any good, right? But I have read and enjoyed some, mostly the ones that are funny, because a funny romance novel can be very, very funny indeed. I'm looking at you, Jennifer Cruzy. But the romance novel constraint is there must be a happily ever after. The 2 people who are obviously meant to be together must end up together. Mm-hmm. And every reader and every writer knows this. There is an ironclad, rigid structure to this. And that it to the point where if you deviate from the happily ever after, you are no longer a romance novel. It is the defining thing of it. And so, why do you need to read more than one? Well, the answer is in the journey, the details, the charm. What is it about these particular characters that makes me care about them, that makes me interested in them, that makes me root for them, that makes them funny and warm and relatable and makes me cheer? Oh, I just want him to kiss her, that fool, that shy fool. This is, I feel, essential to these rigid structure genres, is that the details within the structure are the essence of it. And to illustrate that to people who maybe don't read or like romance novels, consider the mystery. Have you ever read a mystery where the detective doesn't figure it out? We don't know who killed Lord Whateverington, and we're just left, wow, done real slick. We don't even know how he got in the room. No.
Well, I could just spoil one of the great TV series of the last 30 years or so.
Spoilers! There's spoilers coming for us.
Let's just say there's a series which has recently returned to streaming, which starts basically the entire first season is about one murder mystery, and at the end of season 1, they don't solve it. And literally the last, almost pretty much the last shot of the last season, I'm not going to say how many seasons they were, is the defeated detective putting the case file for the unsolved murder in his successor's in tray. It's an absolute kick in the pants. It has been done, and if done right, it's brilliant. And
but really it's only but you can only think of one.
I can only think of one, exactly. And the whole point of
which
it.
Which one it is? Tell me off the air. Okay,
I'll tell you off the air. Yeah.
Most mysteries, and
read our show notes for this episode,
or read the show notes. Yes, in which I will link to the DVD sets with the affiliate code.
There we go.
Mainly, mysteries solve the mystery. And the charm of the mystery, the interest of it is, okay, I want to know not just who done it, but how and why. And I want to understand the motivations, but also the machinations. And so the key to having a good mystery is, well, it follows this very strict structure of discovering the crime, investigating the crime, unveiling the killer or whatever, usually a killer, but how the detective detects is often very different and specific, or how the killer kills is often very different and specific, or how the question of how it was done gets muddied up is often very different, or the motivations. And so if you are going to do a structured by the numbers genre thing, have the details be really wild and intriguing. And what I think of in terms of this is Lover in the Ice, Caleb Stokes's Delta Green scenario, one of his many Delta Green scenarios, but that it's a lot of Delta Green scenarios can be formulaic. And the formula is agents find out about this terrible thing, have to go deal with it, risk their sanity, risk their bodies, have to cover it up, moral jeopardy, fire, we must never speak of this again. It's the interesting details within that where it's like, oh, the fact that this is just an animal that makes people go rape crazy is, that's different. And the fact that there's this gigantic, terrifying ice storm going on, that's different. Pure originality is really hard.
Yeah.
But I love it. But the market doesn't always reward it.
No, I think one thing the one way I think of these sort of like, especially franchises, cinematic universes, whatever you want to call them, is to think of them as subgenres, not as stories. Like Batman, I think of is a genre of superhero, a subgenre of superhero. It has very specific tropes within the broader conventions of superheroes. And Alien is a subgenre of science fiction, and you have to follow certain rules in order to be considered an alien story. And so there's only so much wiggle room that they have and still be called Alien.
Okay, what are the rules of Alien? I'm going to put you on the spot right here, right now, Ross. What are the rules of Alien?
Well, obviously the xenomorphs have to be involved. There has to be, the major theme is humanity is we're our own worst enemy. The alien is pure and an animal, but the greed of the unseen corporate masters, Weyland Yutani, etc., always exceed our grasp.
If the real monster is capitalism?
I mean, it's the story of every of the best two Alien movies, and then there has to be an element of cosmic horror. There has to be a dramatic confrontation at the end. Usually some fight, chase, etc. It's one of those things when you see it. So I think there's a limit to what they can do and still be called Alien. Also, not to mention the license rules that they would have to abide by with the license holder. I'm not going to fault them that.
I would love to know what those are.
Yeah, those would be great to read about, but they're undoubtedly very tightly held under NDAs. And probably a lot of it's also just like, I guess, vibe checks from whatever corporate team is looking it over to make sure it follows within. As we're recording this, there's a new Alien movie in theaters right now, Alien Romulus, which is getting good reviews, but it's also been called as it's loaded with Easter eggs from the other entries in the series. A very nostalgic. Some have criticized it for being nostalgia bait for the original movies, but other people, it's got a very high critical acclaim rating. But anyways. So that's my thoughts on genre, and I'm not faulting them for not being too original with it because there's only so far you can go and still be called an alien.
Nobody wants to see the Happy Days reboot where it turns out that Fonzie is also from Planet Orc.
I mean, and just broadly too, people like the same thing. Like, there's a reason why people keep playing D&D for decades. I mean, it's like, think about your neighborhood bridge club or mahjong club. They're playing the same game for decades, but that's not the point, right? It's to get together and socialize. So kicking down doors and killing orcs is a replace for mahjong.
And the familiar is very satisfying, even if it's a familiar that wants to bite your face off.
And so we should probably get into the act structure at this point. It begins as a milk run, which is obviously your characters are going to die in Shadowrun or an Alien or any game with shady corporations. Cargo run.
You are transporting a cargo of, it describes it as highly explosive tritium. Well, tritium's highly explosive if it's in an oxygen atmosphere. So why you're transporting it in an oxygen atmosphere is not made clear, because it probably won't. It may well not explode. You wake up from deep sleep. It's supposed to be a really easy mission, but it's one because it's the Alien universe in which you're going to be spending decades in cryosleep. So it's pretty much beat for the original thing. You wake up, you're a crew of unremarkable grunts, except one of you is a high-end android. It's pre-gens all the way. There's a pilot, there's the captain, there's the corporate drone who's there to keep an eye on you.
Company agent.
The company agent.
We can just say douche. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very typecast role. At which point something kind of blurs out of deep space at you, and it's weird. It's described as almost a fender bender. This derelict kind of glances off your ship because it's not moving that fast. It's moving at 0.04 of light speed. I'm sorry, you don't have a fender bender with something moving 12,500 kilometers a second. You are pulverized into a smear across higher dimensions.
It's all relative, James. It's all relative.
And at the same time, I mean, unless your computer put you in its path, it's like, space is big, you guys. The difference, people think asteroid belts are these tight things where you have to Star Wars fly around them. No, man. The average distance between two asteroids in the asteroid belt is wider than the difference between distance between Earth and the Moon.
Yeah. It's like, people think the rings of Saturn are tightly packed, and we've flown through those.
Yeah.
I mean we've sent probes through.
The royal we. Through satellites.
I have a friend whose wife is a physicist at Beloit College, specializing specifically in the rings of Saturn, and every time there's a science fiction movie with rings in it, she's still like, no, it's wrong. Why do you keep fucking it up? They're rings. It's not this hard.
So once we get back, once you wake up, you realize there's this derelict ship nearby. You get new orders to check it out. It's the Cronus, a scientific vessel that's been missing for 75 years. And you're ordered to recover the scientific data and samples from it, escort the Cronus to Anchorhead or another facility, and save crew members on the ship. And
if it's not too expensive.
Yeah, that's the third priority. So the players have to go onto the new ship, and then they start encountering the alien weirdness. There's several variants of the aliens in the scenario, starting with the Bloodburster, Neomorphs technically, but there's also a new one for this scenario called the Abomination. But you're not going to encounter that right off the bat, or at least a living one. There's a dissected one in the lab. What's going to happen is the players, once they start exploring the ship, trying to repair it, the crew of the Cronus wakes up. They're all off. And in order to ensure the players complete their mission, the Weyland-Yutani gets the bright idea to tell the AI of the Montero, the player character's original ship, to self-destruct so that they'll be real motivated to take the Cronus back to safety.
These ships can't be cheap.
No,
they'd be blowing them up like they're gonna, like someday you're
it was one of those moments where I went, I see this is really dramatic. At the same time, this makes absolutely no narrative sense whatsoever. Why is it doing this? Also, the players cannot stop it. There's a number of moments in the thing where anything the players do cannot onward march of the plot, as it's not exactly a railroad, because you can run around all over the place screaming most of the time. But there are a number of moments where you feel the players ought to be able to intercede in the plot and stop or divert something happening or make it happen differently. And the scenario is just like, whatever you do doesn't work. And once you can do, I feel it's like Deus Ex Machina. In a story or in a novel or in a film, you can get away with one. Two is too many. There's two or three in this scenario, and it's the first time fine, second time is annoying, third time is like, no, this is not good.
Show me where the scenario deeply antagonized here. So
the way the act structure works is it gives you a list of events that can happen, and some are listed as mandatory, so they have to happen. For example,
but not in any particular order.
Not in any particular order. So they do, for example, that the ship has to blow. The Montero has to blow up. And there's also the Bloodburster. One of the NPCs, Dr. Cooper, begins having a migraine, and then a little alien bursts out of his brain.
Yeah, it's like a chest buster, but not a chest buster.
It's the chest buster you got off Wish.com.
Yes, that is exactly what it is.
Once the Bloodburster is dealt with, that's the end of Act 1 and beginning of Act 2, when the player, at this point, everyone's like, oh no, we're in an alien story. Oh, we're boned. The characters recognize what the players already know. So at this point, characters should be facing each other, should know that there's a huge payday if they can somehow bring back these biological samples. And while others are like, we want to not die, so we need to destroy them. So the blood-bursting thing is caused by an infection from the neomorphic motes, little fungal, little black, the black liquid from Prometheus and Covenant.
Mm-hmm.
It can be, aerosol and can infect people and have aliens burst out of their skulls. So the scientists at the Cronus developed an antidote or a vaccine for it, but
many of the characters are very suspicious of the vaccine.
Yeah.
It's not a very good vaccine, because if you fail a sickness roll once you've been inoculated, you can become an abomination. You start mutating into this weird human alien hybrid creature with 4 stages. Once you get to stage 2, you're no longer a player character. You're just a violent, aggressive monster.
Chariot of the Gods is anti-vax. You heard it first on Ludonarrative Dissidents.
One thing I do like about the scenario is, and in the Alien RPG in general, is a lot of RPGs, like Delta Green, for example, if the GM rolls bad, the big scary is not big and scary because it's big, but it doesn't. I crit failed my attack roll with that. Oh, well, I guess that giant monster does nothing. It trips on its tentacles. In this one, the abomination, you roll on a D6 table, and it can do a horrible roar, which causes panic checks, or it could do a head crush, which just kills a character if it catches them. So it just has these fatality moves and a couple things in between that are just like, it's not a fair fight. You just die. It's too strong. It's too dangerous. You're just going to get killed if it gets a hold of you. So I do like that. That was one of the highlights, was that the monsters are actually like, it's, I just rolled this table and we get to see if it scares you or if it kills you, one of you. So that was a lot of fun.
For the GM.
Well, for the players too, because that's, sort of one of the big moments is like,
why did you sign up to play Alien the RPG if you didn't want to get alienated by an alien?
Exactly.
Going in, just the moment you see the thing on the front of the book, you know what's going to happen. You know what you've signed up for. Your character may be surprised. You are just like, there is a grim inevitability to this. Or there may be an inevitability that I'm quite enjoying.
Somebody's going to get squished. Surely not me.
I mean, I was thinking about the way I would...
Squish Aaron. Nobody loves him.
I was thinking about the way I would run an Alien RPG, and the answer is I would run The Expanse. And 5 sessions in, something explodes out of someone's chest. And the players, I would hope, would be genuinely taken aback and startled and afraid, because by that point they're invested in their crewmates and the ship and the universe. The moment you pick up a game called Alien, you know exactly what you're going to get. And except it can't be exactly by the numbers. You can't do what, Ross, you've already talked about the TSR's adaptations for Star Frontiers of 2001 and 2010, which are literally playing it out by the numbers. It's, if you want to play the exact plot of 2001, you play the module, which is, I think I've mentioned somewhere else, compare and contrast with Jack Kirby's adaptation of 2001, A Space Odyssey for Marvel Comics, which is absolutely...
Wait, what?
Yes.
That exists?
Well, first of all, he Kirbyizes bits of the plot. It's not exactly...
This world is beautiful enough that a Jack Kirby 2001 exists?
It's over...
And none of you loved me enough to
It gets
tell
better.
me.
So it's over 6 issues. Issue 7, Jack Kirby just keeps going. Starchild! Yes, that's a character now. And by issue 8, he introduces Machine Man.
Yeah.
And he introduces new characters into the Marvel Universe. It's extraordinary and brilliant and completely unregarded because it was a movie adaptation and nobody cared. It's Kirby at the moment he was just kind of veering on the edge of lunacy, I am completely digressing. I've forgotten where I was going again.
I mean, people say Jesus is our only king, but among the mere humans, Jack Kirby's the king.
He was absolutely creatively, and churning this stuff out, multiple books on a monthly basis. So now we've seen what happens if you just do it straight by the. You have to introduce new stuff, and in this case, it's the weird little, the virusy stuff, and I quite like the idea of the antidote not being an antidote, or the vaccine not being just as bad as breathing in this stuff. So there are versions in there, and there are kind of new versions of the monster as well, and the fact it's a research ship. It's kind of, how long can you delay dying, rather than, how are you going to get out of this one alive?
Well, but people have this thing. It's I'm the smartest guy. Surely I, the smartest guy in the room, can outwit the alien. And you want to be that. You want to be the exception. And it's in Delta Green, too. It's like, surely I, the most capable agent in the cell, won't be the one who dies to show how the monster works. And your esophagus has now been turned inside out. But sometimes you get to be that guy. Sometimes you get to be the lone survivor, and you tell yourself it's because you're the smartest guy in the room, when in fact, you're the guy in the room who's best at rolling crit successes. But it's still fun.
Well, it's also, you can outwit the alien, but in the alien universe, you can't outwit the alien and the corporate agent or android who's going to betray you to make a buck. And that's sort of the problem, is you have enemies on both sides. The way this scenario is set up is it's a very, it actually demands a lot of the GM to sort of juggle all these variables, like which players have teamed up with others, who's Lucas, who's the secret, android, what's going on at the ship at any given time, where is the abomination or the bloodburster. And so the GM has a lot of ways to speed up or slow things down, a bit like Convergence too. It's not quite a sandbox because it's the ship only has so many rooms. Once the bloodburster is introduced, once the players are trapped on the Cronus, they only have a few, there's only so much that they can do. And where's the ship going? Are they going to try and, are you going to introduce a pirate ship to introduce a way to escape? Or are you going to try and, take everyone out? Or are you going to try and make a buck? So it's a very player on player facing scenario, despite the monsters, because a lot of it is like, what are we going to do given these circumstances? It's not a very clear cut, there's a problem and we need to solve it. It's like, well, one man's problem is another man's payday. So creates a lot of replayability. I could see this too, running this for multiple groups to see, and just assigning Lucas to different characters to see how it works out.
Captain Lucas.
But the GM has levers in the NPCs as well, because they can be used as the guy who shows how bad the abomination is. There's one of the events in Act 3 is, of course, mutiny. The players try to resist the corporate call to. The players want to destroy the biological samples. They have to deal with Clayton, the company agent.
Ugh, Clayton. What a Judge Reinhold. Wait, not Judge Reinhold. Who's the one I'm thinking of? He was in Pretty in Pink. He voiced Ultron and was in The Blacklist. You know who I mean.
James Spader?
James Spader, every bad guy in the 80s.
Yeah, he was Ultron. Yeah, that's right. But yeah, speaking of creature, he's coming back as Ultron, apparently.
Okay.
Yeah, because you can't have anything dead in comics or in Marvel. It's sort of, once the players are trapped, it's kind of going to spiral out of control until there's some kind of resolution. There's a slight chance the players could get on board the pirate ship and escape. Of course, there's a highly likely chance there's going to be at least one person infected on board the pirate ship, who then turns and, you have a final confrontation. And so maybe they blow up the Cronus and escape on the pirate ship and everyone's fine. Or everyone dies, or they bring it, or the ship actually makes it to Earth, and thus, bringing this risk to everybody.
What's the famous line from Heavy Metal? You die, the girl dies, everybody dies.
Yeah. So it's a very tightly bound scenario. So yeah, if you only were running this for 3 players, you could definitely do this in a single, 3 or 4 hour session. But with more players, obviously it's going to take longer, especially because everyone's going to be motivated to run off on their own. Like one of the player character pre-gens is a drug addict who's going to look for a fix, which I thought was a nice, why is this stupid reason for you to go off on your own? Well, you want to get high.
Well, yeah. What's he going to do? Is it suspicious? It's an alien movie. Of course, it's suspicious.
The human drive to get high is difficult to underestimate.
But yeah, so that's why I liked it. Not many scenarios have a player versus player element that like really makes sense for it. The player versus player stuff and like the paranoia, who can I trust, who can't I trust, is like very on brand for Alien. And
yes,
I think that was handled pretty well. The character sheet, like the pre-gens are done at these like one column things, which has everything you need because the system is simple enough.
Characters are very basic.
Yeah. But it works because you can read this in a couple minutes and like hit the table.
I mean, it felt like something designed for a convention play.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
So recently Ross and I were in a Delta Green game that I ran, and Ross was a player in, that we ran for some trusty fans of Ludonarrative Dissidents, and it had very elaborate pre-gen characters. We're talking page and a half, 12-point print of backstory and like, well, here's why you went to the war in Afghanistan, and here's what happened with your wife when you came back, and here's why that's driven you to become an FBI agent, and, you know, all this other stuff about, well, your coworkers like your husband better than you, and, you know, you've just managed to get pregnant after all this time. And on one hand, there's a part of me that's like, maybe this is excessive, Greg. Maybe people don't want to spend an hour or half an hour immersing themselves in a character before they jump in.
Mm-hmm.
And yet at the same time, man, people have really responded to this. The deep pre-gens in, again, Jailbreak have never let me down. And
well, that's Jailbreak though, because that's the core of the entire scenario. The players. The
core of the scenario is, oh, y'all have reason for conflict. You don't like that guy across the table from you. He's done bad things to you and is going to do more bad things to you if you don't stop him. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, I guess I feel if you're going to do as slight is an insulting word. If you're going to do characters who are sketched in as roughly as these are, maybe have a little more tolerance for players making them their own and being like, well, no, this is how I'm going to play this drug addicted character, and I accept that he's addicted to drugs and is going to engage in drug-seeking behavior, but I'm going to do it this way. It's going to be like Requiem for a Dream, and someone else is like, no, I'm going to do it like Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Or Cheech and Chong. There we go. And so, I don't know.
It's also like maybe a difference in player expectations. I feel like this game is aimed more towards, I would say newer players, but not like, you know, the Delta Green fan base is very deep into horror role-playing games. And this is more casual, you know, a more like, especially if you're coming from D&D, right? This is like a D&D player's like, we're going to stay together in our team, and we're going to have a guy with a big shield up front, right? And we're going to have our medic ready. And why are you
tap ahead with a 10-foot pole?
Our niche protection will surely...
I think this is like getting people on sort of, I wouldn't say training wheels, but sort of it's meant to be a bridge for not just hardcore horror fans, but for people who aren't horror fans.
Yeah.
And want to play this. So it's kind of
for people who aren't already twisted and broken, but are maybe a little curious about that experience.
Yeah, I go to Delta Green game and, you know, like, oh, horrible thing's going to happen to be neat. I just want to see how it happens.
Oh, yeah. This better be worth it. My suffering better be rich and Hellraiser-esquely interesting.
Yeah.
You better have such sights to show me, Shane.
To make a scenario for this game is to be in a tough spot because you have to balance all of these factors to be approachable, yet also have something for the more dedicated hardcore horror fans. It also has to be playable, in a tight time constraint, and also still be like something that the license holder is going to prove. There's a balancing act here, and I think this particular scenario does it admirably.
I wish it had been freakier, but I accept that I am in the thin end of the bell curve in, my expectations. Like, to break through the jadedness of Stolze, you're going to have to really get something extra squirmy on there.
Yeah. I mean, this is going to be a scenario. This is a scenario engineered to build memorable moments, like a player getting their arm ripped off by an abomination, and then I was the secret android all along, and we're all going to Earth.
Stuff explode out of them. Yeah. It's I would say if you had to liken it to one of the Alien movies, it's Alien Romulus. It's got all the tropes, it hits all the notes, it's got all the callbacks. You go, yes, this is undeniably an Alien movie. It is not an Alien experience. It is not trying to do anything more than that. It is the equivalent of the Alien live experiences that existed in various big shopping malls in the 1990s. I'm thinking of the Trocadero in London. I assume it existed else.
Wait,
there was a
what?
live experience that you were on some spaceship or other, and you ran down corridors filled with smoke, and either extras in costumes lurched out at you, or
like
very
a haunted
much
house
like
thing.
a haunted, big budget haunted house, and it was a paid experience.
Oh wow!
It's on rails. It
Nice.
hits all the notes. You come out going, yes, that was Alien. It's a ride. It doesn't, and there were a couple of moments where I felt it almost went too far, and it's kind of tip of the hat. When you get onto the abandoned research trip, there is an android there who's been there 75 years and is malfunctioning, but is still alive. And one of the reasons you find stuff that she's left around, I say she advisedly, I think, because the adventure does. And one of the things she's done is folded little origami animals out of tin foil. It's like, no, that's Blade Runner. I know you cross over the two, but androids in Blade Runner, replicants in Blade Runner are not the same as the synthetics in Alien. Because in Blade Runner, they have a limited lifespan, and you've just told us that this one's been alive for 75 years and is effectively immortal. It's not the same. Don't give us a callback to a different movie unless you're going to go somewhere with it. That actually annoyed me quite hard, because players are going to be looking for a payoff there. There is no payoff. It's just a trope.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff like that. This is Alien Romulus. This scenario is Alien Romulus, the game. The game itself, I think, does a creditable job of creating the Alien universe, but never quite getting to grips with what is it. And I referred to this earlier on. The heart of what makes the early Alien movies, the really good ones, work, which is 1 and 2, and to an extent 3, humanity coming to an understanding that it is not the supreme force in the universe, that it is, it's not even close to the top of the food chain. At best, we're kind of halfway down. There are things out there that are just so much better than we are. And that's alongside all the stuff about, man's fear of being impregnated and giving birth that's in the first one, which is brilliant, and no one else has really, really gone there. Apparently that was when Danny Boyle went to see the first Alien movie. That was the only thing he knew about it, that it was about man's fear of being impregnated, which is an interesting reading of the movie, and I think informs an awful lot of what makes it work. It's a very particularly visceral horror in a way that nothing really prior to that had been. And you can't just reproduce that trope over and over.
Hey man, what if you were a woman, but only all the very worst parts?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I haven't thought about that reading myself. I would love to name drop Ridley Scott here. I have never met Ridley Scott. I did do some work peripherally on the special edition of Alien that came out on DVD in the early 2000s, which is to say that there's a featurette on there of Ridley talking to an unseen interviewer. The unseen interviewer is my boss at the time, David Hughes, who I think I've talked about before. Anyway, fantastic guy and a role player, and came up with me doing fanzines in the 1980s. David is also an old friend of Lee Brimmick and Wood, and I mentioned Lee because Lee, back in the 80s or 90s, wrote a book called, let me get this absolutely right, The Colonial Marines Technical Manual, which is one of the... It's still in print. It's one of the great resources, for in-world resources, in-universe resources, for a game that is not a role-playing manual. It might as well be a role-playing manual. Many, many people have used it as a role-playing manual. And again, this is, if I was doing Aliens as a role-playing game, I would get a copy of the Colonial Marines Technical Manual and whatever SF game I wanted to run it with. I was looking at a game I've mentioned, I think in a previous season, Sniper Bug Hunter, which was an almost entirely forgotten TSR gridded war game based on the Sniper World War II man-to-man combat system, but set reinvented for science fiction. And it's a tabletop war game, but it's remarkably slim. It came in a little folder thing, so there was no box expenses. I think it was under £10 at the time when any comparable war game would have been 20 or 25. And it does what it does in...
Explain for our American fans that's you mean pounds as money, not as weight.
This TSR thing, which does everything it needs to do in, I think, 48 pages. And 16 pages of which is the sniper rules. I think another 16, it could be more, it could be 64 pages. But then there's the entire SF thing, which also covers all the SF equipment. And then there's the scenario books. And all the scenarios. Of course, it's not actual aliens, but it's aliens with the serial numbers rubbed off. It's very clearly meant to be aliens.
It's an homage.
There's the one in there where you're just ordinary grunts and this thing appears. And it's a top-down war game. It's not, you're never going to get the same suspense and the same atmosphere. But there was, round about the same time, there was a licensed version from Leading Edge Games, who did Phoenix Command. I think they did an alien role-playing game that didn't...
There was late 80s, early 90s aliens.
Yes, early about then.
Yeah.
But they did a board game as well, which was really simple and quite cheaply produced, which I think it was expensive, but cheaply produced. Paper maps and stuff.
Ouch.
But the aliens in that had one of the first, because it was one of the first cooperative games, which is what makes it interesting, because you're the humans and the aliens are controlled by the game. They have a very, very simple algorithm. They spawn at random locations on the map. They move immediately towards the closest human, and if they are within range, they kill it. And that's all the aliens do, and it's terrifying because they are utterly implacable.
Sure.
And there is, you can't negotiate with them. It's why I think Cameron was such a perfect choice to do Aliens as well, because he understands that threat. He showed it. It's the same threat as in the Terminator. You can't stop it. You can't negotiate with it. It's going to kill you. That's all it wants to do. And I'm off on a rant here, aren't I? So there are so many other, we're going to do Mothership later on in this season, which is another attempt to, take on this style of storytelling in a universe that hates you. There have been many, many attempts to look at it previously. I think Alien hits the tropes. If you really enjoyed Alien Romulus, then this is then you'll enjoy the Alien role-playing game and you'll enjoy this scenario in particular. But if you're looking for the themes that make the Alien movies work, or alternatively, when the themes don't work, the movies don't work either, and that's most obvious in 3 and 4, 5 and 6 are their own thing. And as with, we were going to be rude about Star Wars movies. You were.
He was.
I was slightly rude about Star Wars movies just by implying that they are no longer much of a creative endeavor as a investment endeavor.
I agree completely.
I would argue after the first one everyone after the first was
the second one was good.
Well,
second one I will stand by.
After the Kinner toys started coming out.
I've said it before. I'm going to say it again. As far as I'm concerned, there is one Star Wars movie. It is called Star Wars, and everything else is fan fiction. I can, and that's in my head canon. That's it, and I think that's why the West End version of the Star Wars role-playing game works so well, because it's the original trilogy. It doesn't, there's no fucking midichlorians in there. There's no nonsense about all that backstory that doesn't work, and all the setup that, you know, the moment you look on it, it's tissue thin and just falls apart, as Alien Romulus does as well. The number of people I haven't seen it, but the number of people on social media have gone, I really came out of the cinema, really enjoyed it. 10 minutes later, I decided actually I didn't, because I'd had a chance to think about it. I was off the roller coaster by that point, and I could see the joins.
I've heard similar reports too. I do want to see it though, just, you know, out of curiosity's sake more than anything else. Yeah, Mothership calls itself blue collar sci-fi horror, like that. The blue collar sci-fi, which is, you know, one of the things that made Alien noticeable was that it had this blue collar setting. Like, people weren't wearing Buck Rogers style uniforms; they were wearing, you know, Henry Dean Stanton's character wears a Hawaiian shirt on board the Nostromo. You know, like there's lived, you know, people, actual truck, you know, space truckers. You know,
there's the Drinky Bird,
right?
I still love that detail. The
exactly.
Drinky Bird in there. There's an element of the everyday to it. It's
the problem with adaptations of sticking to a franchise. Like, there's only so far you can stray before it's no longer an adaptation or a continuation or a licensed thing. It's its own thing. With a broad thing like Star Wars, you may have a lot more freedom than, like, Alien is a very specific style of sci-fi horror. And yeah, there are other scenarios for it. There are one space colonial marine themed, which I have not read or run yet. But it is, I think that if you want like if your player's already, like, say, playing Delta Green Godsteed, this is going to be like nothing for them. But like, or Unknown Armies, or, you know, if you're going to like doing the whole Unknown Armies collaborative campaign creation, all that. But if your players are, you know, not used to horror, if they're not fully immersed in it, or they're, you know, fans of the franchise, I think you could do worse than picking up Chariot of the Gods and the Alien RPG and running it for a night or two and seeing how everyone likes it. Because, like, there will be the betrayal of Lucas, the confrontation with the Abomination. Those are going to be some big moments, especially like the player's ship getting blown up. Maybe after they play it, they think about it, like, well, that was dumb, but like in the moment they'll enjoy it probably.
And
so,
I mean, people aren't always smart.
Yeah, exactly.
Dumb things happen every day.
This conversation pointed out flaws that I had not thought about, and look at it, there's for our listeners at home, James does have a copy of Bug Hunt.
Tell me that's not an alien on the cover.
Oh yeah, there was a whole...
It's wearing a headdress and it's carrying a staff, or what looks like a magic wand, actually. But it's, oh my god, it's an alien. I think it's Parkinson.
Well, of course, Warhammer ripped it off too with Space
Look
Hulk.
out, man! Yeah. The Xenomorph has a wand of fireballs. We're screwed, dog. We're just screwed.
There's a YouTube channel called The Bad Movie Bible. They have this hour-long mini documentary on knockoffs of Aliens after it came out. There was a whole category of films. There were dozens of these things made, and right after to cash in on it. And
Extra.
Yeah. Extra was one of the better ones, actually. There were far worse ones than Extra.
Oh my god.
I'll send you the link. But that wraps up. I think we've pretty much fully covered the scenario at this point. So thank you all so much for listening and supporting Ludonarrative Season 3. If you want to get these episodes in early access, we have a Ko-fi, which will unlock the early access RSS feed, so you can get these episodes a month early. And of course, we have extensive show notes for this episode, which will have links to everything we talk about. And our next episode is going to be a big book. It is Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition. And Greg might have a few things to say about that, I think.
I might. I mean, I worked on it.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't work on the main book, but I have written for a supplement for it. So.
Yeah. So
yeah, I think the main book is mostly Ken Knight's special magic.
And Ken, I think, the lead designer on it.
Yeah, I have not kept up with Vampire for years, so it'll be good to catch up on that and see where it's gone in all this time.
That dares to suggest that a woman is never more beautiful than when you're looking straight up her nostrils.
The cover art is a choice.
Yeah. We'll come on to that next episode. We will talk about that at length.
There's a teaser.
Yeah, there's a teaser. All right, thank you so much. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Right.